Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today's video is going to be a fun one. In today's video, I'm trying to fire blast as many opponents as I possibly can with SALAZZLE. SALAZZLE is a big glass cannon. It has a massive attack stat. Combining that with Fire Blast, which is one of the highest base damage of any charge attacks, and we're in for some monster damage. It goes without saying this is not a team that I would recommend for climbing, but I had some very fun sets with it, and the inspiration from the team goes to 0-0 draft. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Hopping into the first match here, leading Como-O into Annihilate. I have two better responses in the back, so I am going to save switch into the SALAZZLE. Opponent is staying in this matchup, and they're going to bank a ton of energy and send in Lickitung. No baits here, going straight for the Fire Blast. It connects, dealing massive damage to the bulky Lickitung, and just like that, one of the bulkiest Great League meta Pokemon loses switch advantage to a SALAZZLE. SALAZZLE exiting with energy. If they send in the Annihilate, I'm going to throw my charge attack right away. They end up just sending in Dewgong. I fire off the Poison Fang. Opponent, even though that wasn't enough for the Fire Blast, they end up respecting the damage nevertheless. Now I can fire off the Poison Fang into the debuff Dewgong, and they've taken so much damage already from one glassy SALAZZLE. They fire off the Icy Wind, they can send in the Annihilate. Annihilate has to go for a Shadow Ball here to pick up the knockout, so I'm gonna no shield. They only end up going for a Night Slash, and now in comes Como-O. Como-O, if I get this shield call correct, I should be able to get the farm down. It is the Shadow Ball, and now I can farm down, and I'm going to be able to take this game. In comes the Dewgong, I'm farming up, and at this range, even a Dragon Claw will probably be enough to pick up the knockout. Opponent is going to commit the shield and fire off energy, but I do have quite a bit of energy stored on the Talonflame, so I can send in the Talonflame, throw one Incinerate, and make it to the Fly. Fly is going to be able to pick up the knockout onto Dewgong, and that is a good game. Hopping into the next match, letting Como-O into another Annihilate. Same game plan as before. I have two mons that resist counter in the back, so I'm going to save switch into the SALAZZLE. This opponent is staying in this matchup, which works out very, very nicely for me. This is not enough for the Shadow Ball, so I can no shield, although Night Slash does so much damage. In comes the Dewgong, and I'm going straight for the Fire Blast. This is neutral damage, and it connects, almost getting a one-hit KO onto the Dewgong. Dewgong exits very close to an Icy Wind, but with one Dragon Tail, I'll be able to pick up the knockout and deny that energy. Opponent sends back in the Annihilate. This makes me think that my Como-O is valuable in the back, so I do decide to shield in case they have a surprise Ice Punch. It's unlikely that they would be running Night Slash and Ice Punch, but since they brought it in, I figured it would have value, and it does, as in the back they have Lickitung. I'm baiting with the Dragon Claw. Opponent makes a really nice call. That's honestly a very nice read there. Understanding that it's the Como-O, I'm very unlikely to just full send the close combat. But now I can fire off Dragon Claw after Dragon Claw, and the high rank Como-O able to make it to one final Dragon Claw, forcing the shield from the opponent. In comes the Talonflame. Opponent realizes there is no longer a win con, and they resign the match. Hopping into the next match, and we see an absolute nightmare lead Como-O into Azumarill, and Azumarill beats this entire team. So this is going to be a very, very difficult battle. I send in the SALAZZLE. I'm able to hit for super effective damage with the Poison Fang, but as you can see, SALAZZLE has zero bulk. These bubbles are shredding through the SALAZZLE. Opponent goes for a Poliwrath there, which is very good information. If they had the cheaper Ice Beam, they would go for it, so this tells me they're on Poliwrath and Hydro Pump. I'm going to try and make it to one more Poison Fang, but I don't get there. The bubble KOs. I'm going to send in the Talonflame with the knowledge that I'm going to have to commit a shield here on the Hydro Pump, but after that, I should be able to get a very nice farm down. Opponent not going to let that farm happen as they send in Talonflame, and if they're switching into a mirror, then my guess is they're weak to Talon in the back. And if that's the case, then I'm going to try and preserve the Talon. I'm firing off another Fly that is going to connect, and now I can send in Como-O. Como-O looking for the farm down, unable to get it as the opponent reaches 100 energy. They go for the Fly. Como-O able to survive on 1 HP. Let's go, Como-O. I leave with the close combat. They make a nice play of sending in a Azumarill here to absorb this energy. What do they have in the back? And it's a Ferrothorn. And we're 2 Incinerates off a Flame Charge. So the impossible has happened. The team triple weak to Azumarill beats an Azumarill, and that is a good game. Hopping into the next match, hitting Como-O into Defense Deoxys. Not a great matchup for honestly any of the Pokemon on this team. I'm going to save switch into SALAZZLE. Opponent is going to go for the Psycho Boost and Dip strategy, immediately forcing a shield. Opponent is going to send in Umbreon, and I'm firing off this Fire Blast. If they no-shield this is going to do quite a lot of damage, and it lands. I should be able to absorb a foul play here, so I'm going to let this go. The Umbreon is running Psychic. You've got to be kidding me. The one Psychic Umbreon still out there, and unfortunately I find it. And Psychic, even though it has been nerfed into a pretty mediocre move, is still able to pick up the knockout because SALAZZLE just has no bulk. Back in comes the Defense Deoxys. They're at a massive energy disadvantage here, but they do have a pretty big advantage in terms of having 2 shields to my 1. I'm firing off a second Dragon Claw. I'm able to grab the shield back. I send in the Talonflame. Opponent is farming up. This is enough for a Thunderbolt or a Rock Slide, so I will shield. It is going to be the Thunderbolt. And in the back, they have Guzzlord, and I don't really see a path to victory in this game. I fire off the Fly. It does quite a lot of damage to the Guzzlord, but Guzzlord is going to be able to make it to a Crunch or a Brutal Swing here. And this just gets me too low. The Crunch is going to connect. My only hope is that for some reason they shield this, but they know they can just no shield and win the game with their Defense Deoxys, as Deoxys is going to get the counter down, and Como-O falls just short of making it for a farm down, and Psycho Boost will get my opponent the victory. Picking up a slightly negative lead in the next match, leading Como-O into Shadow Poliwrath. I'm going to throw one Dragon Tail and then save switch into SALAZZLE, knowing that I can make a Poison Fang before they make it to a Scald. And Poison Fang is going to add up a lot on the Poliwrath. Poliwrath is going to commit the shield. They almost assuredly go for an Icy Wind bait, but I'm so glassy that I have to shield this anyway. So the Icy Wind will be shielded up. I continue to farm. They send in the Charjabug. Oh man, please no shield this. Charjabug is completely walled by Como-O, so they don't have a reason to shield it, but they do shield it. The first shielded Fire Blast, and I am absolutely devastated. But even though they protected the Charjabug's energy is completely useless going up against the Como-O, as they can go for X-Scissor after X-Scissor, but Como-O just does not care. The Dragon Claw is going to connect. Opponent firing off a move on alignment here. Opponent tries going for a Discharge, which is definitely confusing, as Discharge and X-Scissor do the same damage, but of course the X-Scissor is going to be less energy. So there's no reason when both are neutral to ever go for a Discharge. I'm able to pick up the knockout in the back. It's a Skarmory, and they have no fire counters remaining, and I take the win. Great lead in the next match, Como-O into Lantern. But my opponent save switches into Guzzlord, and I don't have a good response to this. I'm going to stay in with the Como-O, grab a shield with the Dragon Claw, and then send in SALAZZLE. My opponent firing off energy, and I am going to respect it with a shield because SALAZZLE just can't take a hit whatsoever. I'm farming up. I'm going for the Poison Fang. I need this to knock out. It would be massive if it's able to pick up the KO, but the Guzzlord barely hangs on and makes it to one final charge attack. So not only have I lost half a Como-O, I'm forced to go down a shield with the SALAZZLE, so now I have no shields remaining. So this is not looking too good for me despite the very good lead. I'm going to be able to make it to a second Poison Fang, so my opponent is forced to fire off energy, but then I can send back in the Como-O, and they're probably going to look to switch out here. I send in the Como-O. Opponent is going to switch into Wigglytuff. A Charm registers on the Como-O. My opponent timed that extremely well. They threw one Spark and switched, anticipating that I wouldn't be able to react in 0.5 seconds to be able to save my Como-O from taking a Charm. So that was just a very well executed Gambit there by my opponent, as by landing that Charm onto Como-O, I now can no longer take a move, which means I just lose the game. I'm going to be firing off Flame Charge after Flame Charge here, trying to boost up my attack, but they've already debuffed my attack thanks to that Icy Wind from Wigglytuff, so they can just shield this, and they have a move loaded, so when I send in the Como-O, they make it to a move before I'm able to make it to a Dragon Claw. So unfortunately, a game that may have been winnable, my opponent just executes very well, and they take the win. Hopping into the next match, leading Como-O into, what do you know, another Annihilate. Same game plan as always, just save switch into the SALAZZLE. Opponent is going to send in the Guzzlord. I farm up to fake a potential Dragon Pulse here, hoping for a shield. My opponent is going to give up the shield. That's quite nice. And I decide, you know what? I can shield here, withstand the Dragon Tails, and make it to another potential Dragon Pulse. Unfortunately, I'm unable to make it to a Fire Blast. I would love to Fire Blast here, but I'm able to grab both shields from my opponent, And of course, with 2 Poison Fangs, that means 2 debuffs. So their Guzzlord is extremely debuffed. They're taking a lot of damage from these Dragon Tails. That Dragon Claw adds up, but I'm able to get the farm down. I'm going to look to switch out here, and hopefully Talonflame can do well in the back. Annihilate fires off a charge attack, but they throw on very poor timing as I get an entire Incinerate for free. In the back, it's Lickitung, and this right here, this is looking like a good old-fashioned Talonflame sweep. I Flame Charge right away to boost up my attack, and then I'm going to be going for the Fly. Fly does do some very nice damage here. The Fly is going to connect, and now with one more Incinerate, I can just shield. This Incinerate will knock out, and I'm only 1 Incinerate away from another Fly. In comes the Annihilate. They recognize they're unable to get to a charge attack, and they resign the match. Moving into the next match, getting Como-O into Jellicent. Very happy to catch the water type on the lead, as of course Jellicent would completely destroy my backline. I know that I am able to survive a Shadow Ball, so I am going to let this go. My opponent baits with a Surf. That's really nice for me. I build up to the back-to-back Dragon Claws, and I don't see a Hex sneak through. This means if it's a CMP tie, then they threw a Surf here. This is only 7 hexes, not 8, so I know it can't be a Shadow Ball, so that's a very comfortable no shield for me. They're now going to aggressively switch into Skeledirge, so they're running an ABA Ghost team, which is a pretty big surprise. And now I can just stay in here with this Como-O, make it to yet another charge attack, and grab a shield from my opponent. I'm now going to send in the Talonflame. Opponent firing off energy here with the Skeledirge. I decide to no shield. It's the bait. I'm farming up. I go for the Flame Charge, but unfortunately, this is actually an IV-dependent CMP. The vast majority of the time, Talonflame should win it, but if you're running a very high-ranked Talon, and they have a Skeledirge that isn't the best rank, then unfortunately, they can actually win that CMP tie. They send in the Jellicent. Jellicent is going to be firing off the Surf, but now I can just send in SALAZZLE. SALAZZLE gets the full farm down, exiting with energy. In comes the Annihilate. I'm going to build up to the Fire Blast and wait a turn. Come on, let me Fire Blast. Please. They shield. And now this is suddenly actually losable. If they have Night Slash here, this actually could mean that I'm in trouble. And they do have Night Slash. I continue to farm up. I am so low. I try for a catch. Unable to do so. I send in the SALAZZLE, anticipating the catch. Honestly, at that moment, I forgot that they didn't have a shield. So I should have just thrown the back-to-back Poison Fangs. But this way, because I forgot they didn't have a shield, I do get to Fire Blast the Annihilate after all, even if it was at 1 HP. What do you know? Another game, another Annihilate lead. I save switch into, oh my goodness, I save switch into the SALAZZLE. They send in a Shadow Whiscash, but look at this Fire Blast. That is resisted damage. SALAZZLE just barely not able to flip that matchup. It's wild that SALAZZLE, as a Pokemon that takes double super effective damage from ground, was able to deal that much damage to a Shadow Whiscash. They go for the Mud Bomb. Mud Bombs do so much damage from the Shadow Whiscash. Opponent is now going to send in Annihilate. Annihilate firing off energy, and I have a tough call to make. I let it through. It's a Night Slash bait. That's huge. I'm going to be firing off the Dragon Claw. This does not pick up the knockout here, but it will get the opponent low. Opponent, they end up getting knocked out by the Dragon Tail, and in the back, it's Skeledirge. Talonflame does do well here. I'm expecting my opponent to try and bait, so I am going to let this through, but they full send the Shadow Ball, and I just found my loose con. Oh my goodness. After the beautiful Fire Blast landing, I find a way to lose the game with both my shields still intact. Hopping to the final match, picking up a very tough lead, Como-O versus Skarmory. Save switch into SALAZZLE. In comes Shadow Whiscash. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it to a Fire Blast before they can just fire off a Mud Bomb, so I decide to go for the Poison Fang. Opponent fires off energy, and honestly, that's okay with me, as I baited out the Whiscash, and now I can send in Como-O and go for an aggressive farm down. To be honest, I should have waited my clock here, as unfortunately, I am not going to be able to switch when they send in the Skarmory. I can go for a close combat, but even so, I am barely still not going to be able to switch. So I fire off the close combat, the switch clock, still not up, in comes Talonflame in the back, it's Gligar, and this is a winnable endgame for Talonflame. I go for the Flame Charge first, as with Talonflame's new pacing with Fly, you can go for the Flame Charge after 3 Incinerates, and then you can go for the next 2 Flies on 2. So you end up outpacing quite a lot of things. in the 2-shield scenario. My opponent is going to fire off yet another aerial ace. I can continue to farm up and then go for the fly, making sure that I am throwing one in the move, so I am throwing on good timing here. The fly is going to be shielded by my opponent. Honestly, my opponent is taking a lot of damage from the incinerates. I don't think I can quite farm down though. I'm going to wait. Opponent tries to go for a catch of a fly onto Skarmory, but now I can just go for the flame charge. I don't think an incinerate would have knocked out before, but at +2, it definitely will now, and we take that win. All in all, I had a lot of fun getting to run Fire Blast on SALAZZLE. I mentioned at the start, and I do want to reiterate here, this is definitely not a team that I'd recommend for climbing. I was able to go slightly positive with it, I believe 8 and 7 across 3 sets, went 2-3, 2-3, and then a 4-1 to end it, but I think in large part that's just mainly due to the fact that there was a little bit of luck on my side and the fact that people just didn't really know what to do when they saw a SALAZZLE. I mentioned at the start, but this team was actually inspired by someone who submitted battles, 0-0 draft. Unfortunately, the link to the battles that they submitted wasn't working. I tried to reach out and get a working link, unfortunately wasn't able to do that, so I figured if I can't shoutcast some Fire Blast SALAZZLE battles, I'm going to try and be the change that I want to see in the world and try it myself, and I ended up having a lot of fun. So big shout out to 0-0 Draft for the idea, and I did get to have an absolute, no pun intended, blast using Fire Blast SALAZZLE. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. A special thank you, as always, to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.